Okay, so this part might seem a little bit daunting, but if you go step by step, you should be all right. We're gonna get started on the nose, and the first thing I do is I cut one more piece of wood that's the same dimensions, same shape as this inside frame, and we're going to use that temporarily just to hold our paper together. Now, I've already gone ahead and done some of the work, but the first thing that you want to do is get yourself a rather wide piece of cardboard. I'm using just a single corrugated. There's going to be a lot of folding on this one, so you want it to be as easy to fold as possible. Might look a little bit less complicated this way. The most important thing we're going to do is center our cardboard, and first thing we want to do is get this width, which is here. Then you've got the sides, which are here and here, and these will be the sides of the cockpit. This will be the side, and this will be the taper where it goes to attach to the nose. This part is a little bit complicated, but we'll get to that in just a second. You also have these flaps at the bottom, so what happens is when we put our piece together, those pieces will go together, and we'll trim a little bit, and that's going to create an opening for your child's face or head. Now, the first thing that you want to do, as I mentioned, is space it out. So here's the center line. Oh yes, you would measure the, in my case it's about 14 inches, but this is from the top of the shoulders, and this goes down just below their belly button. You don't want it pointing too far down on their crotch, because it's going to get in the way, and it's going to look a little bit weird. So in my case, it's about 14 inches. 15 inches. And what I do is I separate that in half. So we've got 7.5 here, 7.5 there, approximately. This part is a rectangle, then it tapers in a little bit. This area here that I have marked in, that's going to be where the cockpit is. There's another part of the cockpit that will be attached to the back here. So if you want to help visualize it, it will look something like so. Now, it's a very good idea to do a rough copy. Do a rough copy, get your general estimates right, and then once you get your overall measurements, you unpack the whole thing and then cut out a nice even stencil, I guess you call it. So yeah, so we've got the cockpit here, and then it tapers, and then the nose goes all the way down. Along these lines, so in my case, you've got 4, 2, and 2, and then on the sides. So I just draw a line all the way across, and I fold. So that's like that, and like that. This height generally like so. All right, so it's gonna go finish somewhere. You don't want it to go all the way down because the cockpit doesn't sit on the ground. There's landing gear underneath. But if that helps with the visualization process, this is essentially where we are. So it will be maybe about an inch lower than where the air fans are. But again, that's not set in stone. If there's some variation, it is not going to be too big of a deal. Okay, so I've gone ahead and glued this piece in, and that's like having an extra set of hands. It just helps hold the shape while I'm working with everything else. because it is quite a complicated piece. One other thing that I'll do is I'll take a piece of tape and just mark more or less where that ends. And again, it's about having that extra set of hands to help hold things in place while you're working on other sections of that piece. Okay, so that we have a square, and with this holding in place, we can go ahead and we're going to glue the bottom of the nose together. Like so. Okay, so now that these parts are glued, I've also tacked the nose in place. So these are the only holes that we have left to cover. And the way I do that, and please guys, if you find an easier way to do it, I will love you forever. We just fold that down. And I take a pen and I mark. Most important thing I want to mark is there will have to be a fold here. Because there's a difference in angle and here. So once I mark that, I go ahead, try and mark down where that fold line will be. Okay. And we're gonna fold it from underneath. There we go, so we got our fold. Once we have that, we can just glue this section and this section, like so, and then we'll repeat and do the same for that. Let's go ahead and do that. Yeah, unfortunately, it's not an exact science. That's why it's always a good idea to do a rough copy first. At least these complicated side pieces, you'll have a much better idea of how to do them. Since I've already done this a couple of times, I'm willing to take a chance. And even if it doesn't come out perfect, no one's gonna notice unless they look really, really close. Oh my god, if you saw what Starscream actually looks like, it's butchered. It truly is butchered. So once the glue is dried in here, what I can do is I'm going to cut along that fold. And we can slowly start getting rid of all the extra cardboard. Now what I do, I just rest the knife flat against the cardboard and just follow that line. And it will get rid of that excess cardboard. And even if there's a little bit left over, the rest will be very easy to remove later on in final finishings. Alright, there we go. And we can also do the same for over on this side. Actually, this is really big. We don't need that big of a piece. Make life a little bit easier for us. Alright. So, where is that side? Oh, yes. So again, we'll follow the fold. And then and we're going to clean it up a little bit later. So now, if we look back inside, there's going to be one more fold because there is a change in angle here. Now, there is no corresponding change in angle anywhere. So what we're going to do is we will make the fold go from here to here. So we've gone ahead and glued that. It's probably easier to glue from the inside. On all of mine, the inside looks like an absolute mess, but again, nobody's ever going to see it. And once the glue is dry, again, we will take our very sharp X-Acto knife, make sure it's one of your newer ones, nice and clean, and then we're just going to follow that line and trim all the way down. So you can see here it's a little bit wrinkly. It's not perfect, but actually it's better than my original one. So I'm happy with it, and I think we're going to go ahead with it. Okay, so I think overall that's kind of what we're going for. And now that the big piece is gone, I'll just go over it again and try and take as much of it off as possible before we turn to sandpaper. But it will need to be sanded as well. So what you end up with is a bend here and a bend here, which lines up more or less with the bend here. This is just a line, it's not a bend. That will be covered by the cockpit. So we'll go ahead and repeat this nightmare for the other side. So once we're finished doing all our cutting, this is essentially what we end up with. So we have a space big enough for their whole face and most of their head. If their head goes inside a little bit, that's okay. Not really too big of a deal. We're going to go ahead and smooth this out as best we can. You see I have a little bit of a problem here. Nothing that a little silicone can't hide. Okay. And as far as the inside is concerned, once you're happy, if you want, you can use this as a rough draft. As I said, once you know the exact dimensions, you go ahead, cut along all the seams and unfold it into a flat piece of paper and use that as a template to make your 100% good copy. But in this case, I'm reasonably happy with it. You can go ahead and just put globs and globs of glue in all those seams, double glued. It's not going to look pretty, but again, no one's ever going to see it, and this piece will actually have a little bit of strain because that's the part that the kids are going to be pulling on when they're transforming. So you want to make sure that those pieces are very, very well glued together. And then we're going to do the final preparations to have this nose attached to the body. So we are almost finished the fabrication process. Yay! So this is the front of the robot. Here we'll have the canopy. Now what I do is I actually cut out a little section here to help it fit nicer with this. Now the reason I have these dimensions is because when your child is in robot mode, when it's all the way up, they have a hard time seeing. Their angle of vision is cut off. So I cut this out so that it's easier for them to see everywhere, especially where they're walking. So basically what I do is I'll stick it in there, see where it ends, draw a line. In my situation, this is 2¼ inches. So then I'll measure 2¼ inches and give myself a nice 90-degree angle here. And once I have it drawn out, then I'm just going to go ahead and cut that. The last part of the actual fabrication process, we have to figure out a way to attach this to this. And the way that I do it is one more piece of stick. I cut it at a 45-degree angle, round off the sides here. There we go. That's rounded off. And we drill a hole, and I attach it on the outside, not the inside, but the outside of here. So we'll have about an inch, 1.5 inches of overhang. This is actually going to act as the hinge for it. So we'll go ahead and mark where we want to put the glue. So normally this is a step that I would leave to the very end. Since I'm running out of time here before my vacation, we're going to do things a little differently. And I'm sure you guys are all excited to see how the actual transformation takes place. So the last bit of material that we need is my trusty old fishing line. This is just a regular 25-pound fishing line. Seems to work quite well. So the first thing that I'm going to do is tie myself a knot. Actually, I'll tie it several times. I usually make a knot out of 3 or 4. So we get a nice big fat knot. All right. And I'll cut myself a bit of a length here. Now, first we're going to attach the nose to the big wings. What I've done here is I've drilled a little hole through the cardboard, but not through the wood. With the wood, I do just a very small pin prick. The wood is quite soft. You could also use a tiny little bit on the Dremel, but you want a smaller hole here. That's going to hold the knot, and the bigger hole in the cardboard, that's actually where the knot is going to hide. So we have the knot end over there, and then we just want to fish the open end through all the way. Now we can cut off the excess because we don't want anything sticking up and poking our kids. And you pull it all the way through, and then the knot should hide nicely inside of the cardboard and against the wood. Alright, so we take the fishing line, and then we'll fish it through our little wheels, Lego wheels. You don't need to use Lego. Screws should be fine as long as they don't have threads on that last little bit. Next thing I do, we need to figure out the measurements. Now the measurements will be different in every situation. So I can't tell you the exact measurements, but I can tell you the method I use to determine what the measurement should be. So I take a small piece of tape and I mark it, and we lift the nose all the way up. So now we are in a fully retracted position. Once you know what that position is, you go ahead and mark it like so. And we want to figure out what the range of motion is when we are folding down the nose. So I go ahead, fold the nose all the way down to where it will be resting, and that gives us about here. And we can always double check. So boom, boom, boom. Yeah, you might want to do it once or twice, because I think, oh, this time it's different. Okay, not sure why that happened. Alright, so now that we've got our range of motion, we will measure. So in this case, I am at about 7 inches. 7 inches. So I use the hinge as my middle point. So in the case of 7 inches, that means we're going to have 3.5 here, 3.5 there. So I'll go ahead and mark 3.5. And that's essentially where I'm going to be drilling my hole. Again, if you don't have a tiny drill bit, that's fine. Even using a sewing needle, it's very soft wood. You could push it through, or a thumbtack. We can get another bit of tape, and this time we're going to put it to mark your connection point to where you drilled the hole. Alright. And then we go ahead and fish it through. And we will stop once the tape touches the wing part. Be careful not to pull too hard, because the fishing line is a little bit slippery, and if you pull hard, it's actually possible that the tape will slide along and then you'll have the wrong measurement. So you can go ahead like that, and then we're going to tie another knot. Once you're happy with that, just go ahead and trim off the excess. So let's see what happens. As you pull on the nose, it pulls up the wing. There we go. Okay, so now with the tail, it's pretty much the same process. So first we want to figure out our actual range of movement. So we mark here, and then we fold the tail up and see how far that range of motion is. make sure the tail goes all the way up. And then we will mark that. You're going to take whatever your measurement is from here to here and divide that by 2. And we apply that to the big wings. So we measure from the bottom of the big wings, mark it off. And again, we don't have to be super precise. You can be off by a little bit. It won't cause too many problems. Go ahead and drill. Okay, so with the tail all the way down, what we're going to do is measure whatever that half of whatever your measurement is. In my case, so you line it up with the hinge, and where you have the hinge, in my case, it was just under 2 inches, 1 3/4 inches. And I'll go ahead and mark that with the tape. So from that's about 2 inches, so we can slide that up a little bit. Yeah, that's better. So the distance from the tape to the hinge is half of the range of movement, the total range of movement. This measurement should be the same as this measurement here, from where you drilled the hole to the end of the tape. And we can fold up the tail just to make sure everything's nice and loose. We're going to put the line through. The tape will act as our guide. Don't pull too hard because the tape can slide. So we've done one side with the fishing line. I hope you can see that. And again, it's all controlled with the nose, one motion. We pull down the nose pulls up the big wing, and then the big wing pulls up the tail. And if you got your measurements right, then the wings will sit up nice and straight, and the tail will also sit at a more or less 90-degree angle. And again, we fold the nose up, and as the nose goes up, the big wings go down, and the tail goes down as well. I usually wait until the very end to do that. We do all the finishing. A couple other pointers. You'll see that we have some foam here on the nose. This is the canopy, and I also put some foam here on the back, and that's just to get a few extra details that you just can't do with cardboard. You see, I've marked off about a 1/2 inch all the way around on the top and on the sides. So I'm going to go ahead and cut that. Okay, so I'm assuming that you guys have gone ahead and painted all of your pieces. So as you can see, the finished product, you've got the foam sculpted here. You've got your other foam also sculpted so that it all blends in with the engine there. And of course we've got our canopy, which is blended here as well. As far as painting, best suggestion I have is look to the cartoon character pictures, and that will give you a good idea. So I've gone a 1/2 inch, 1/2 inch, 1/2 inch gray, 1/2 inch red, and a 1/4 inch white. One way that I find it much easier to paint is first paint the whole thing gray, and then once it's dry, tape it off, and then on both sides paint your red, take off the tape. Once the red is dry, tape it off both sides, and then paint the white, and then take it off. Okay, other thing that I wanted to bring to your guys' attention is with the wings, once everything is painted, you are going to glue the wings onto the wooden frame in the back. Once it's glued, then you can go ahead and paint the rest of the wooden frame. I like to have it the same color as the shoulder pieces, just create some continuity there. You'll see the fishing line here and here, 2 different connection points. Now, what I wanted to bring your attention to is on the big wings here. Once the wings are glued, you're going to drill some holes in the cardboard. So glue the pieces together and then drill from the back. That will give you an idea of where the holes are. And then you can use a larger bit. I use my Dremel tool, and I just drill through the cardboard but not through the wood, and that will create these little recesses here for the nuts to fit. So you've got 2 nuts fitting here, and this other hole, that's where the fishing line goes. So in your final construction, you're going to tie your fishing line into a knot, fish it through here. The knot will hide underneath. You'll notice also these little guys here. Those are just Lego pieces. I don't know how well you can see them. They're just smooth Lego plates. And what I realized after making Starscream is that the fishing line tends to cut into the cardboard. So you can use a little piece of wood or whatever. I just used the gray Lego because I had it on hand, and I super glued it in place, and that just keeps the fishing line aligned with the holes without cutting into the cardboard. We'll talk a little bit about underneath as well. Now, with the nose, if you remember when you were doing the construction on the nose, these 2 pieces are glued down the middle. That actually is a bit of a weak point, and what I did to strengthen that is I have a piece of what do you call this, ribbon or strapping, and I glued it all the way underneath, all the way the whole length of this part of the nose, and that just creates a much stronger thing. This part will never come apart. And last but not least is the landing gear. And I made this landing gear out of the same wood sticks. I just cut it in half and put them together, and then made some circles. This was actually accidental. It was not part of the original plan, but we found that when the child wanted to transform, he couldn't reach the nose to pull it down. So we just kind of stumbled into this. It serves 2 purposes. It looks nice as landing gear, which is pretty cool, but the primary reason is it gives a handle for the kids to grab onto something. And basically, when they pull on this, it just pulls everything else in line. So the length of this will be determined by how high the final product sits off the ground when your child is in jet mode. The characters that you see usually have rockets or laser guns on their arms. I found that we did try to do it, but I found that it was very impractical, especially with all these little things sticking out. It was just getting caught on everything, and it was very difficult for the kids to transform and move around and stuff. So as a compromise, we just put rockets onto the wings. This is actually, I went to the dollar store and bought some aluminum foil, and this is the roll from the aluminum foil, and we just attach these little winglets. You can make those from cardboard or from any extra wood. If you use the wood, you don't have to worry about rough edges and siliconing them, so the wood might be the better option. And for the rocket heads, we actually also went to the dollar store and got, there are these little plastic eggs of silly putty, and they had a nice curve. So I took the ends, glued it on, and then trimmed all the way around, getting rid of the excess. And oh yeah, the last thing, these are furniture sliders. In my case, they are 1.5 inch. These usually what you put under your chairs or your couch, makes it a lot easier for you to move your furniture across the floor. Because this part is going to be in contact with the floor every now and then, we don't want to scratch the paint, so I just put a little piece of wood underneath as necessary so that it sits higher than the cardboard, and it simulates pretty well the original character. The character, actually, those are supposed to be fans. I didn't paint any fans because it's just going to get scratched anyways, but that's another little helpful hint, little furniture sliders. Oh yes, and so one final reminder, guys, once you're ready to paint, where can we, oh yeah, there we go. I also go to Home Depot, and they call these testers. You can get them for about $5. At the paint counter, you can get any color you want, basically. So, assuming that you guys have gone ahead and made the full costume, including the clothing, pants, shirt, and the vest or apron, whatever you want to call it, you would take those fabrics with you and then match the colors as close as you can with the paint, and that's just going to, you know, take you to the next level. There'll just a whole lot of continuity there. So if you want to take a closer look with me, I basically went as bright as I could. Brightest yellow, brightest red, brightest blue. It just jumps out at you. Here I put in a black line, which really creates a separation, extra contrast between the gray and the red. Don't forget, you want to put in some flaps, top and bottom, and a few other, I think this is an air brake, and I just put some grills here for added effect. And that's it. So there you have it. Starscream, Skywarp, or Thundercracker, whichever one you want. So I hope this tutorial has been helpful to you guys, and I'd really love to see your creations, what you come up with, and hopefully you can send us some videos and we can feature some of your work on our page as well. Alrighty. Thanks for watching, guys.